Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Adjusted Expectations at the Peer Pathways Conference. We are so glad to be sharing this time with you and really happy that we are here together. So thanks so much for joining us. We want to share just a couple of housekeeping matters with you. Probably one of the most important is that we need your help. We actually live in a remote area, a little more rural area, and so we have limited connectivity. And what will help us stay connected is if you will mute your audio and disable your video. So we won't be able to see your smiling face, unfortunately. That helps us connect, but you will still be able to see us. So we won't disable our video, but if you would kindly help us by disabling yours, that should keep us connected. We really appreciate your help in that way. We do want to remind you of the conference confidentiality clause that doesn't permit recording, screenshotting, photographing, saving, or sharing our presentation today and the slide deck in any form. We do want to welcome your questions. We want to engage with you. We look forward to interacting with you, and we will do that primarily in the chat. So if you're not familiar with the chat function, if you hover your mouse over your toolbar, you will see the chat icon come up. It'll say right on there, chat. And if you've got a question that you would like to ask of us, perhaps as we are presenting, something comes to your mind and you're thinking, boy, I'd like to know more about that, or I'd like some more information or further detail, feel free to throw a question at us into the chat. And at the end of our presentation, we'll be looking in the chat and retrieving your questions and responding to you. And at that point, you can unmute yourself and dialogue with us. So thanks for helping us in this way. We're really looking forward to our time together.
So throughout our time together, we are going to be telling you our story, the story of our family, some of the deep disappointments that we've experienced, some difficult relationships, and some devastating losses. And through this, we want to share with you how we have learned how to build resiliency and really move from surviving to thriving. Though not intended, some of the content may be triggering, and if that happens, please hear yourself and really practice on this.
We want to introduce ourselves to you. We don't want to assume that we've met you before. And so to give you a little bit of an intro to ourselves, we have been married for 29 years.
Very long years.
And she's loved every moment. And we are the adoptive parents to fraternal twins. They are now young adults, and they live with brain-based disabilities as well as mental illness, ranging from mild to severe. It's my privilege to serve as an international keynote speaker, and I am recognized as a top trainer with the National Council for Behavioral Health, specifically in the area of mental health first aid. I do serve Washington State as an advocate for individuals who live with severe mental illness, substance use disorders, and justice-involved backgrounds.
I am a licensed substance use disorder professional, and I provide recovery services to those who are seeking to overcome some of those life-controlling issues. We are both Washington State certified peer family counselors, and we are members of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, otherwise known as NAMI. You may have heard of NAMI, and we provide peer family support through a support group with them. We love to do home improvement projects. We like to travel, and we especially love to do what we're doing this afternoon in providing hope and encouragement to others.
And the most important thing to know about us is that we are owned by a dog and a cat. So hopefully we've got some dog and cat lovers out there. but we've got one of each, and I think they own us more than we own them. But really glad to be with you today. Thanks so much for sharing this time with us.
You know, like each of you, we had certain expectations as to how we thought that our life would end up. We did not expect that we would experience the struggle of infertility.
We didn't expect that after the arduous process of adopting our twins, that they would develop mental illness and live with brain-based disabilities.
I never expected that I would be that mom who would call the police on her own children.
We didn't realize that we'd have a lot of sleepless nights and worry-filled days, that it wasn't our expectation that our children would actually choose to live homeless and be outside of the safety and the security of the home that we offered them.
We never expected that we would experience so much stress in our marriage that we actually contemplated divorce. And we lived separated for almost 2 years before we came to that place where we were able to reconcile our relationship and move forward once again.
And we decided that we just can't live without each other. So here we are. There was several years where we were owning and operating a family business. It was quite successful and doing really well, but we didn't expect an economic recession that would cause the closure of our business and some devastating financial losses as a result.
We didn't expect that the dreams that we had for our life would be so drastically different from what our reality has been. I did, however, expect that I would get married to a wonderful man, and that expectation did come true 29 years ago. There we are. Wow, look at us. We were very, very young.
And look, I had hair. I mean, there's proof right there. There was a time when Tony had hair. I mean, it was receding even at that young age, but we were looking pretty good back then, weren't we?
Oh, yeah. So after getting married, you know, my dream was to be a mom. And I expected that we would have lots of children, that we would have this big house filled with lots of love, lots of laughter. And that's really what I wanted and what I expected my life to be. But becoming pregnant was more of a challenge and more difficult than what I ever anticipated. After seeing several infertility specialists, I did eventually become pregnant, but that pregnancy ended too early and resulted in a miscarriage. I was devastated. This is not what I expected. And my dreams of becoming a mom were becoming shattered. I experienced a total of 4 devastating, heartbreaking miscarriages. One that had severe complications and almost took my life. 4 precious babies that I had longed for were lost before I could ever hold them in my arms. We all experience the pain of loss. It may be a broken relationship, the death of a dream, financial struggles, marital stress, or some other deep. We find ourselves kind of stuck in that hurt and that pain deep down inside, and we try to ignore it and hope that it will all go away. I know for me, that's what I hoped. And I hope that living in denial would simply make it better.
After a period of time and a very arduous process, we decided that children would come to our family through the wonderful gift of adoption. And after all, there were children that needed families, and we were a family that needed and wanted children. It was part of our dream, our expectation of having this family and this home filled with lots of noise and laughter and love. And so imagine how excited we were to bring home 22-month-old fraternal twins. Here they are.
Oh, yeah.
Boy, were they cute. And they even looked like us, right? Everybody everybody would say, wow, they look so much like you. Because remember, I had hair back then. And we just absolutely fell in love with these two. And from the moment we first saw them, we knew that they were brought to us and we were brought to them. And from that moment, we were a forever family. This is our only son and our only daughter. And we were blissfully optimistic. We were wonderfully hopeful about the future. And what we did not know is that very critical development stage can miss in the first 2 years of our children's lives when they were not living with us. Their birth mother had abandoned them shortly after their birth, and they were left in the care of their birth father, who found it very difficult to meet their needs. And so he relied on others to do so. What that created was a lot of disruption in critical relationships in their life, where they were being bounced around from person to person and place to place. They had no primary consistent caregiver in the first 22 months of their life. And what research indicates happens to a child when they don't have a primary consistent caregiver in early infancy and early childhood is they don't learn how to bond to people, nor do they learn to really trust people. This is known as reactive attachment disorder. In addition to those adverse childhood experiences that were no fault or choice of our children, they had also been exposed to drugs and alcohol in utero. And alcohol exposure in utero causes permanent organic brain matter loss and damage, never to be regenerated, never to be restored. And so it causes a whole spectrum of developmental delays and challenges throughout the individual's lifetime. This is known as fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And our twins are now young adults, and they continue to suffer with invisible brain-based disabilities that were not their fault, and they did not choose them, and neither did we. Our expectation of parenting and the family dynamic that we thought we would have was very different from what we actually were experiencing.
You know, there's this saying that we ran across that really described our parenting experience. You know, it goes like this: parenting a child with special needs is like playing a sport where no one knows the rules, the goalposts keep moving, and there are more referees than players. You know, we found this saying to be very, very true for us in our parenting experience. We had so many referees trying to give us direction and guidance, but we didn't have very many people that we felt were on our team supporting us, and we were really, really struggling. We encountered a lot of criticism from our family and from our friends, from people in our faith community, and there were even a couple of professionals that kind of wanted to blame the challenging behavior on our parenting without really understanding that there was some brain function that was driving this behavior. Now, I will be the first to admit that we are not perfect parents. We still are not. We're still learning. In response to all of this criticism that we were facing, we isolated and we withdrew, the things that you really shouldn't do. You know, it wasn't intentional on our part, but I think it was more of kind of a defense mechanism that we put up in response to the pain and the hurt and the struggles that we were facing. In all of the stress that this was adding to our lives, it added a tremendous stress on our marriage and tremendous stress on my home. For years, I struggled with chronic fatigue on a daily basis. I experienced periods of depression. I dealt with anxiety on a daily basis. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. My life had become so overwhelming that I was struggling to function successfully on a daily basis. My expectations for this happy, healthy family were not materializing, and I felt the sea of life kind of coming in and threatening to drown me. Now, here's the thing. We all face disappointments in life, don't we? Every one of us, we've experienced disappointments, but it's what we do with those disappointments that define us, how we handle those, how we choose to respond. And what we want to share with you is some of the things that we have done in our lives to build resiliency so that we can handle these disappointments and these challenges and move from just surviving to thriving. Now, taking these steps does not mean that the challenges will go away, right?
They have not gone away. In fact, in some ways, they've become more complex.
Yes. But what has changed is us. And what's changed is how we are choosing to cope, how we're choosing to adjust our expectations, adjusting our expectations of ourselves, of our children, that really is making the difference.
Absolutely. If you're just joining us in the last couple of minutes here, I want to ask you to help us to improve connectivity by muting your audio and disabling your video. We would love to see your smiling faces, but we live in a rural area where there's limited connectivity. So those of you in the city with lots of high speed, that works well. We do not have privilege. And so it's really helpful if you can disable your video and mute your audio. That'll not only reduce distractions, but it maintains a better connectivity for us. So thanks for helping us in that way. One of the places we really like to go to as a family, in fact, we're headed there this week, is to the ocean. We love to go to the beach. This is a picture of the twins on one of our visits many years ago to Claylock out on the Olympic Park, Olympic National Forest. And we just love visiting the ocean. And if you've traveled the Washington State coastline, you have very likely come across one of these signs where they warn you about rip currents, these sneaker waves that come in and they sweep a person off of their feet and they pull them out into the open ocean. And what a person instinctually does is they swim as hard as they can, as long as they can, directly against this powerful current that's pulling them out to sea. And yet, unfortunately and sadly, what happens is inevitably, because the current is powerful, and it's much bigger and it's much stronger than the individual, that person eventually becomes so exhausted that they die by drowning. Now, this is what we felt like was happening to us. All of a sudden, the sea of life had rose. These waves had washed in upon our life that were vastly different from what we had ever expected our life, our family dynamic would look like. And it was pulling us out to sea, to this place that was churning with crisis and constant conflict and pain and problems. And so what we did was what a lot of people do. We were swimming as hard as we can, directly against the pain, the problems, the crisis, the conflict. We were giving every last effort to swimming directly against the flow. Now, research indicates that if you're going to survive a rip current, you've got to do what is actually counterintuitive. You have to practice radical acceptance. That when the current of life is pulling against you, it's trying to pull you out to that sea, you actually have to let go of control and swim with the flow rather than against it. If you do anything less than that, exhaustion is sure to set in. So to build resiliency in our lives, for Lori and I to move beyond this state of surviving and really start thriving. Even though the pain persisted, the problems still occurred, there was continued crisis and conflict. Rather than swimming against the flow, we practiced radical acceptance by letting go of control. And we swam with the pain parallel to the problems rather than against them. You know, there's a prayer that is probably familiar to many of you, and we'd like to invite you to pray it with us. It's known as the Serenity Prayer. Will you read this along with us? It says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
So one of the other things we really had to kind of learn early on is we had to learn how to embrace imperfection and to quit comparing. We had to learn how to make friends with kind of some of the mess that we found was in our life. We spent years really trying to project this picture perfect image. We wanted everybody to think we had this nice, normal, perfect family. In reality, it was just kind of a mask that we were putting on, and behind that mask was a lot of pain and a lot of brokenness. We didn't want to embrace the imperfection, and we didn't realize what we were doing when we were comparing ourselves to other people. Now, for a minute, I'm going to talk about family vacations. Now, we've had some doozies. We've had some real doozies of family vacations.
We have had some doozies. In fact, one of our family vacations was such a doozy that it ended by the tent being thrown in the dumpster in the campground as we drove our way out.
Yep, that was one we would rather forget. I've heard it said you can have a family or you can have a vacation, but you cannot have a family vacation. But you know what? We did have one really, really nice family vacation. And by looking at this picture, I want to see if you can guess where we went. Yes. We went to Disneyland. And there's this saying that Disneyland is the happiest place on earth. And I can tell you, for the week that we were at Disneyland, it was the happiest place on earth for us. And there was this picture reminds us of that brief moment in time that we felt like, you know, we were this happy family and what other families experienced, because it met the twins' need for constant entertainment, something new all the time. And it was a wonderful, wonderful week. Now, here's what the trap of comparison can look like. If you were to see this picture without knowing some of what we have just shared with you, you too might fall into the trap of comparison. And it sounds like this. Wow. I wish my family could go on a vacation like they did. I wish we could go to Disneyland. My family doesn't do anything fun, right? Have you ever found yourself saying that? Lots of times. And what that is, it's falling into that trap of comparison. And here's the thing, comparison always fools us into believing that our life is lacking when we compare it to someone else. And comparison, all it does, it just drives discontentment and it fuels greater disappointment. Be careful. It is a trap. And what we've had to learn and what we want to encourage you to learn is we've had to learn how to embrace the imperfection. You know, chasing after that illusion of perfection only leaves you feeling empty, and it will never. We've come to this place where we are accepting that this journey that we are on is the right journey for us, and it's going to take us right to where we need to be. Is it different from what we expected?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it way more challenging than what we ever expected?
Yes.
Yes. But you know what? It's the right journey for us. So don't fall into that trap of playing the comparison game. There are no winners in the comparison game, and it will only leave you feeling lacking and lonely.
We encourage you to embrace imperfection. Be okay with the mess. Make friends with it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember a time in particular, though, where we did get caught in the comparison trap? The twins should have been graduating from high school. We were getting prom pictures, senior portraits, graduation announcements, and declarations of plans for people's future from peers that they should have been graduating with because they had grown up alongside of them. But because of their difficulties in navigating the social complexities of high school and the educational rigors, and a lot of effort to try to keep them engaged in completing their high school diploma, unfortunately, they dropped out of high school. And we were really devastated. We were very, very concerned because as we got these announcements, as we saw these beautiful portraits and learned about future plans of their peers, there was this trap of comparison where we were looking at the lives of others and we found ourselves feeling this tremendous sense that our life was lacking. What we saw in others, we wanted for our children. What we saw other families celebrating, we wanted to be able to celebrate. We got caught playing the comparison game. We've been caught in that trap more than once. Mm-hmm. And we want to draw your attention to it this afternoon, that the comparison trap always leads to a sense that your life is lacking, and it will drive you towards discontentment. I want to remind us again, if you're new and joining us here in the past few minutes, could you please disable your video and mute your audio? We live in a rural area, as mentioned, and we have limited connectivity, so it will help us maintain connection with each other if you can help us in that way. One of the places that the comparison trap really shows up most, at least for ourselves, is right here. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I mean, these are the places where we're looking at images, we're seeing pictures, and it looks like these are perfect people living in perfect homes, eating perfect meals with perfect vacations, driving perfect cars. Wow, my life is really lacking. And it just drives this sense of discontentment when we're caught in the comparison trap, rather than embracing imperfection and making friends with the mess in your life. It's difficult to embrace imperfection because at times when we're experiencing the trap of comparison, we're forgetting that those comparisons aren't really reality. Those perfect photos on Facebook, those aren't someone's everyday, day in and day out experiences. That's a highlight. That's a brief moment in someone's life where they're saying, hey, look at me. Wow, look where we're at. Look what we're doing. But that's not really the reality of the day in and the day out. Here is reality. Reality is that adversity doesn't discriminate. Lori and I had to come to this place where we realized and we were accepting of the fact that adversity wasn't picking on us. We weren't victims of life. That adversity is really a reality of life. There isn't a person here this afternoon in the conversation we're having that hasn't experienced pain and problems. We have all encountered grief and losses. Adversity is a part of life, and we have to learn to accept it. But one of the difficulties to accepting adversity is that we live in a disposable world. We live in a culture that says, tired of it, get something new. Oh, don't like it, replace it. upgrade. We live in this culture that is constantly communicating to us a disposable approach to life. We want to encourage you to ditch the disposable approach to life, because just like the comparison trap, it breeds discontentment.
Now, this is not a picture of our cat. I kind of wish it was. It looks like a really cool cat.
Pretty cool cat,
Yeah.
but not our cat. But our cat does have a really cool name. His name is Captain Jack, who kills sparrows. How's that for a name?
Yeah.
He doesn't really get the opportunity to do that, but maybe he dreams about it. So ditch the disposable approach to life. Difficulty in that is that we can remember an incident that occurred in our home in which our son was transported to Seattle Children's Hospital, where he remained for 2 weeks in the psychiatric unit. We never expected that to be a part of our family's story. We were, however, hopeful that the professionals there would be able to help us, as we were having difficulty addressing behavioral challenges and maintaining health and safety in our home. The advice that we received was rather shocking. It was a disposable approach. They told us that our son's behaviors would likely continue and in fact become more complex and difficult. And they were right about that. But their advice was that if we wanted to salvage ourselves, if we wanted to have any sense of sanity and safety and well-being, we should terminate our adoption and relinquish our son back to the state. We couldn't believe that they were advising a disposable approach to our son. We could not, we would not, and we have not embraced a disposable approach to his life. We want to just take a quick moment to say thank you to each of you for the work that you do, because you're reaching out to people and you're communicating very loudly through your words and your actions that people's lives are not disposable, but that they count and they matter and they hold great value. So thank you for the work that you're doing. What we have done, instead of approaching life with this disposable aspect, where even when problems become great and the pain is intense and the problems persist, instead of just disposing of those things and those people, we have chosen instead to hold to hope. We're waving our hope flags here today with you. We're holding to hope. And how do we do that? We're focusing on what's left in life. Now, there's been a lot that's been lost, but instead of focusing on what's lost, we're focusing on what's been left. We want to see our successes rather than focusing on our failures. Lori admitted earlier, we are not perfect people. We haven't been perfect parents despite our efforts to do our best. I think the loudest voices that speak to most of us inside of our own thoughts and minds are the voices of our failures. In order for us to build resiliency in our life and move beyond surviving and really start thriving despite the ongoing challenges that life may be presenting, we focus on how are we succeeding, what has been left, and we got a gratitude list going. In fact, we want to encourage you to hold to hope by writing a list of what's left in your life. Focus on your successes and get your gratitude list going, because it's not a matter of if adversity will come to you, it's a matter of when. And when adversity comes, isn't the time for you to try to identify what's left, what the success you've got to be grateful for. You need to have that hope list ready at the hand so that you can call upon it to build resiliency even in the midst of the present challenge. So ditch the disposable approach and hold to hope. focusing on what's left, your successes, and get your gratitude list going. Because what we know is that these are all things that are consistently true of resilient people.
This next picture is a picture that reminds us to hold on to hope. This picture was taken about 6 years ago. We were dropping our daughter off at yet another rehab facility, and we were holding on to hope that this would be a new opportunity for her, and that this would be a place where she could really start to make some new beginnings. We didn't know it at the time, but this is actually the last picture that we have of our family all together, the four of us, for what will be many years to come. Several months after this picture was taken, the twins were arrested for a crime that they committed together in a very impulsive, reactionary moment where they were not thinking about the long-term consequences. And, you know, what they did was very, very, very wrong. They were confined to county jail for a year while they were awaiting their sentencing. And I will never forget that day sitting in the courtroom while we were waiting to hear what his final sentence would be. And he chose to reduce our daughter's sentence and released her based on time served. However, our son was not released, and he was sentenced to 16 years in prison, for which he has now served 5. The pain of this has been immeasurable. We never, ever expected that our son would end up in prison. There was a period of time right after the sentencing and all of this had happened that we couldn't even speak of this. We were so embarrassed. We felt a lot of shame. We felt guilt at everything that had happened, and we couldn't talk about it. We were afraid of the judgment of others, what they would say, what they would think if they found out where our son was at. And it's been a process, but over time, we have come to this place where we are learning to embrace vulnerability, and we are choosing vulnerability, and we're choosing to share our story. We've made this decision that we are going to stop hiding. And, you know, we tried that for years and it really didn't work. So we're going to choose vulnerability instead. And here's the thing, it takes tremendous courage. It doesn't come easy. It's not always a natural thing to do. And for years, I believed a lie that, you know, people wouldn't listen to me if they knew everything that I've gone through, all of the struggles with my health and parenting and our marriage. And I really felt like there was a lot of areas that I had failed at. And that fear of rejection and that fear of what will people think kind of paralyzed me, and it kept me silent. But you know what? That is such a lie. And this type of thinking really keeps us trapped in silence, and it keeps us in unfounded guilt and unfounded shame. And it causes us to disconnect from relationships and the people that we meet. I believed that having a voice in this world and helping others would only come about once I had everything together. But you know what? That is so not true. And I had to change my thinking from what will people think to I am enough. And this is something that I have to work on every day. And I want to encourage you. You are enough. Don't allow shame to silence you. Owning and sharing your story is one of the bravest things that you can do. Brene Brown has talked a lot about vulnerability, and in her book, Daring Greatly, She says, vulnerability is the last thing I want you to, right? Isn't that good? She also goes on to say that our connection to one another is not found in our strengths, but rather in our shared struggle, our pain, our chaos, and our heartbreak. You know, you are making a connection with us today because we are sharing with you about our struggle. We're sharing with you about some of our heartbreak. And it's that shared struggle that is connecting us. The more vulnerable we become, the more connected we become to others. And that's something I'm working on. I'm working on becoming more vulnerable. And I want to invite you to join me in that, in becoming vulnerable and sharing your story with somebody else.
You know, vulnerability in sharing your story is something that needs to be done with appropriate degrees of disclosure. We don't tell everybody everything, and we don't tell everybody anything. There's an appropriate degree of disclosure. There's appropriate people to whom we disclose. And but here's what we know, and Brene Brown's work really reinforces this, is that when you and I choose to share our story and we take our mess and we make it our message, it's liberating, it's freeing. You experience a newfound freedom. And vulnerability becomes the birthplace of purpose from your pain. It's the birthplace to finding greater meaning. It's the birthplace to finding the joy that's been eluding you. So we encourage you today to share your story with discretion, the right time, the right people, to the right degree. But as you share your story, it will bring freedom, purpose, meaning, and joy to your life. Share your story, friend, because you need to tell it, and there is someone who needs to hear it. Our hope today, as we've shared some of our story with you, is that it might spur you on to consider moving beyond, mourning the losses of what you may have expected your life to look like. We've shared that there's no one here today that hasn't encountered adversity of varying kinds. And there's no doubt that you have held expectations of what you thought something would be like in your life that it did not later materialize to become. There's loss surrounding that. Maybe today is the day where you make a conscious choice to move beyond that place of mourning. You want to build resiliency and go beyond just surviving to thriving. The crisis, the conflict, the pain, the problems, those may continue. Our life is still complex. We still have dynamics that are difficult, but we no longer live in a survival mode. We're thriving in life, and we're living truly our best life, but it wasn't always that way. We got there by practicing radical acceptance. Maybe this is the place for you to start today. You might be feeling like the current of life has pulled you out to a sea of crisis and conflict. But we encourage you to join us. Practice radical acceptance. Let go of control and swim with the flow. Swim parallel to the pain, swim parallel to the problems, rather than swimming directly against them.
Maybe you feel like a good place for you to start will be maybe to embrace imperfection. Maybe what we shared with you about some of the things that we did really kind of, stuck with you. Am I stuck in the comparison trap? Do I need to spend less time on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter? And that's something that we have to really limit the amount of time we spend on social media. Embrace imperfections, accept the mess, make friends with the mess, and move on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Perhaps you need to ditch this disposable approach to life. And you need to hold to hope.
Yes.
Maybe you need to get going on that gratitude list Write out what's left in your life. Focus on what you have succeeded at. Hold to hope by ditching the disposable approach to life.
And maybe a place for you to start would be to really choose vulnerability. Start by sharing your story. There is someone who needs to hear it, and you need to tell it, and it will make you stronger. The more vulnerable we become, the more connected we become to other people.
So our hope and our prayer for you today, in all of that which we've shared with you, is that you would build resilience through the practical steps that we've shared. These are things that Lori and I actually have done. We continue to do. We have to revisit them regularly. These are practical steps that we personally practice because we no longer to live in that place of ignoring our losses. We want to move beyond surviving and start thriving. So we shared this earlier, but let's conclude our conversation once again, shall we? With this familiar serenity prayer. Will you say it again with us? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's really been our privilege to share this conversation with you today. And we thank you for allowing us to share the message amidst our mess. We'd love to stay in contact with you. If we can be of further service to you, we do provide life coaching and consultation. We provide public speaking engagements as well as training opportunities related to behavioral health matters. So if we can be of assistance to you, feel free to reach out to us. These are a couple of ways that you can do that. But we're going to turn our attention now to you and to your questions. So we're going to pull up the chat and we are going to look there at what are some of your questions. And while we pull up the chat, I'm going to back out of our slide deck here and I'm going to put up a new slide for you here. And this slide is the one slide that you have permission to screenshot. So if you want to print that out or screenshot that, that is a summary of what we just talked about. So feel free to screenshot that and share that with others around you. So Lori, let's look in the chat here and let's see if we've got some questions, all right?
So there is, looks like if you look in the chat, they're wanting to get your feedback on this workshop. So there's a link there. So we're going to go back up and see if anybody, I'm not sure if it's of
We apologize for that. It's definitely beyond our control. So I'm looking for questions here in the chat.
If you have any comments or anything, just plug it in the chat there. And if you can't screenshot or save this one page, you can send us an email and we'd be happy to send it to you that way as well. Looks like our desktop may be in the way. And we are a little bit new on this Zoom thing. And I don't know how to get rid of the desktop. Sorry.
Thank you for that. We want to open it up for questions. We've got a few minutes here, very intentionally left time for some dialogue. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So if you would like to unmute yourself and just ask us a question, we would welcome that. Maybe you'd like some more information.
Okay, here's a question. How long did it take you to learn to be vulnerable about your children's dramatic choices, their crimes? A long time. This is probably one we've shared it a couple of times, but you guys are actually one of the first that we talked about our son's incarceration. The first couple of years that he was incarcerated, we couldn't talk about it. That they wouldn't ask us how the twins are doing. And we did everything we could to avoid it. We were isolating, we were withdrawing. And we really had to work through some stuff, you know, like I talked about, that fear of what will people think. It paralyzed us.
And really, honestly, it nearly destroyed me. Lori and I have not always worked in the behavioral health field. So actually, it was through our family's lived experience that we changed careers. And part of that was a demand that we do so. I was serving previously in what you might call a high-profile public position, and there are expectations that come with that type of office and service. And so it didn't play well to have children with behavior challenges that we had occurring and law enforcement showing up at your house and so forth. And I was doing everything I possibly could to do image management. And I worked really, really hard to try to project an acceptable image because my whole career depended on it, and to protect that image. Image was incredibly important, and we live in a culture that really reinforces that. And I had to come to a place where I put myself first. I was literally dying from the inside out. People had no idea the degree of struggle that was going on in our lives. And so I don't know that we could say it took X amount of time for us to embrace this type of vulnerability. And before you think that we're just too incredible, I think that it was an evolutionary process, and it was also one that was forced. Speaking for myself, I didn't just gladly embrace what was going on. It was forced because I just couldn't continue to function in the effort that was exhausting me. I was swimming against the flow. I was doing everything I could to protect and project an acceptable image, and it was destroying me. So through force and through evolution, we came to this place of just really embracing the mess. And boyfriends, if I could, I just encourage you. I don't want you to get to the low place we got to. It just about destroyed our marriage and our health. And we were warned of that. But
once we really came to that understanding and recognition that all these expectations that we had placed on ourselves and our kids, it was destroying our relationship with them. And if we wanted to salvage that, you know, we had to come to this place of adjusting our expectations. And as that occurred, you know, we kind of did some healing work around that. You know, and the next step we knew is that, you know, the next step was we wanted to really bring some purpose to what we were experiencing. And we knew that there were other families that were experiencing some of the same things. We would share just a little bit, and we would have other families coming to us and saying, I've experienced the same thing, me too. And it's like, okay, we need to, you know, get out there and really start connecting with other families and letting them know that they are not alone, because that's what we needed.
We needed an ally.
Yeah.
We didn't have an ally. And man, we were swimming hard against life's flow, but we really needed an ally. So
Great question.
Really what Lori I want to be is an ally to other families that are facing difficulties and are finding themselves in some unexpected places. So thanks for the question.
Another question. When you start feeling like comparing with others, do you talk to each other? Do you talk to each other when you start to feel like comparing? Yeah, you know, I don't know if we necessarily always use those terms, but yeah, I think we can tell when we're spending too much time on social media and we start to get kind of snarky. You know,
We work really hard to improve our communication. So we spend time together every morning, start our day together. And we have a time of connection and conversation. And part of that is building our marriage relationship. So there's an aspect to communication that is referred to as assertiveness. And if assertive communication is when you simply are expressing what are your wants and your needs. What do you want more of? What do you need less of? And so we really try to improve the communication to enhance our relationship with one another so that if we're falling into the comparison trap or we're struggling with a particular stressor, we're able to reach towards one another and lend each other the support that is needed.
so Kim said, I'm doing my current position, so no parent has to walk the journey alone. Thank you, Kim.
Yes, thank you, Kim. We
It
need
is
more Kims
so-
out there.
You know, and here's the thing, you know, if as parents, and at the beginning, we really did not understand everything that was going on with our children. We didn't get some of these diagnoses until later on, and we did not know how to help them. We didn't know how to help them. We really didn't have any other families to connect to. Once we finally connected in with NAMI, which was really a lifesaver to us, and we found other families that were going through the same experience. And you know what? That is so important, to just feel like you are not alone. So thank you for that.
Incredibly valuable
Yes.
to build your coping skills by educating yourself. And one of the places that we've done that as a layperson is through the National Alliance on Mental Illness. They have great resources. Their national website is a plethora of information.
Mm-hmm.
And their local affiliates provide free education and support to individuals living with mental health conditions, as well as family and friends who support them and share a relationship with them. And so we really have found some great support from peers with the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And just a quick shout out to our local affiliate in Thurston and Mason County. Great group of people. We appreciate all that they do and continue to do in being allies for people who experience mental health conditions.
So thanks for your comments here. So someone here said, not only adoptive children, but biological children too. I'm raising a grandchild due to my son's disorder. Yeah. That's challenging, very, very challenging. But thank you for doing that for your grandchild and being that supportive person for them.
Thank you for your kind comments here. We're reading them
Yeah.
while we're looking for your questions as well. Does anyone have a question for us? You can either throw it in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask us a question. We've got a few more minutes here, and we very intentionally left time at the end of our presentation to just dialogue. Maybe you are a family member, a friend of someone who's living in an unexpected place in life and you are wanting to try to navigate that yourself or lend support to someone who is, you might have a question of us.
And I just want to say, you know, if you want to connect with us afterwards in a more private way, you can send us an email at adjustedexpectations@gmail.com. That is our email address. And if there's anything else that, you know, maybe you would like to say or just connect up in another way, we would love to hear from you. And the page now in the background is something that you can screenshot, email that to you if you're having problems getting it. It's kind of an outline of what we just shared, our presentation. Just to kind of, I know for me, sometimes I'm not always good at taking notes because I'm listening. So it's nice to get an outline and just kind of a reminder of some of the things that we talked about on how to build resiliency. Right down our alley, resiliency.
Absolutely. And again, thank you to each of you for joining us today. It looks like we may have exhausted the chat and not hearing any further questions or comments. So I'm going to give you a few minutes here to yourself to refresh your beverage, get an afternoon snack before you head into your next session. But it has been a real privilege to be with you today, and we thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to connect with us. Thanks so much. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Take care.